Hello and welcome to the Tech Capital. Joining me today in London is Kao Data's new chairman, David Bloom. David, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much, yeah.
Thank you for coming on camera at such a short notice. You've literally been appointed about an hour ago. So
that's right. You're my first official meeting.
I'm not going to ask you the normal questions like how do you feel and all that, but we'll get you some flowers afterwards.
Thanks.
But, on a business front, so I mean, you founded Goldacre in 2012.
That's right.
Goldacre merged with NOÉ Group a few years later, and then in 2014 you launched Kao Data. So you've been involved with the company from the beginning.
Yes.
How will things kind of change now that you're the chairman? What does the role entail, taking into account your previous involvement with the business?
So I've had a different roles over the years in the business. So in some ways this is a little bit, back to the future. I will take on a role here which has an executive feel to it. Working with the SMT, working to appoint the new CEO. And generally helping to drive the expansion of the business. It's extremely exciting times at Kao. I'm as excited, perhaps more excited than I've ever been about the sector, about the business, and so this will be a good 50-60% of my time every week. So you'll be seeing a lot more of me.
If there's a time and a place to be, it is this industry right now.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
We were just chatting to your chief commercial officer as well when we were talking about the move into, for example, Europe. And how the offering that you have around AI doesn't really exist on the continent yet, because it's still very much the normal old colocation hosting services that are provided. But picking up on that, and I mean, picking up on your experience as well. So you've overseen nearly more than £500 million in investments over the years. So within data centers, technology companies, startups, and all that. So how are you going to leverage their experience to then really take Kao into those new markets in the UK and on mainland Europe?
So businesses go through two phases really, well, two initial phases, start up and scale up. Kao has been through its startup phase and this is very much, I would say, the center point of the scale up phase. Right. So the key for me is you've got to learn to grow on two fronts, to continue building the foundations of your core market, which for us is the UK, always will be, always has been. But taking, as you say, that with our shareholders who are present in a number of markets, as you say, I've operated in a number of markets, so taking that experience, taking that network and using it to take the product and expand into those geographies.
Okay. Well, we'll be watching very closely which
I hope so.
You'll be landing your feet on the map.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you said UK will always forever be your home in terms of Kao.
Absolutely.
So we know about the business in London, we know about Harlow, Slough, Northwest London, but Manchester is what got people talking. So that's going to be a £350 million development in Manchester, up north. Talk us through, I mean, how excited are you about the project first, and then talk us through about the project itself. What is the timeline of what you're doing there, and what's been the acceptance as well? So
my view is that we are seeing now the proliferation of the MEX markets. So we've been through a period where in Europe anyway the flat D markets have kind of dominated. But every day now we're seeing, whether it's Berlin, Madrid, Manchester, these places are, because of the nature of the expansion, because of the nature of the compute that is looking to be placed, there's just a need and it's going to grow. So the vision behind Manchester is we think that the time is now to make that investment. We've had great interest, great support, both locally, governmentally, and from the DC community in terms of end users. So the messaging is clearly there that people are looking in those new territories. So for us, it's almost the blueprint of not going too far away from home and delivering, and then taking that next step. So, if you see a boat in the port of Manchester heading for Europe with Kao on the side, that'll be us.
Well, it'll cost a lot of money in sponsorship, I'm sure.
I'm thinking more of a trawler, but yeah.
Are there any other locations in the UK that could be of interest in the future?
So I believe so. I think we're still yet to see, like we have in Manchester, the supporting evidence. So you've really always, this is an industry that's got to follow the customers, it's got to follow the data trends, it's got to follow where we feel the demand is growing. So, but yeah, as you know, there have been offerings in the UK in places like Newport. Yeah, there's always sometimes a story behind a particular location. So today it's absolutely Manchester. But tomorrow there are second, third cities such as Birmingham and other places where you can see, dependent on the user cases, that need will grow in that space. But for us right now, focus is deliver Manchester.
Interesting. So, and then I think you sort of already answered my question, but I'll remove the UK now from the question, just make it Europe. How do you look into site selection? What are the main things you look at when you're going to developing a site in Europe, and even acquiring a piece of land? So,
I mean, there's the obvious things. We're of course looking for power, and scale of power. I believe in campus models. I believe in expansion space. I think that end users want to see that pipeline. I think it's also, again, we've been very successful in identifying the HPC life sciences corridor here in the UK and betting on the fact. I mean, my original thesis was that at the time, 10 years ago, we'd seen kind of banking really dominate the end user model in outsourced DCs. But actually, both obviously with technology companies, but now very much bioscience, pharma, life science, to me it was a natural next step because what's going on in those spaces. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, although we have now met a few in Cambridge, to say, well, throughout Europe there are in different countries they have their own life sciences corridors. Yeah, life sciences and industries in general tend to cluster. So we will be targeting where those customers are that are focused on our specialisms, HPC, generative AI, as Spencer was talking to you about earlier. That's a real calling card for us. So this sector sometimes has a high-level misconception that it's very generic, whereas of course there's a lot of commonality between one offering and another. But actually, that last 20% in terms of target customer, end user experience, what is it that user needs, actually varies, in some cases quite widely. So we've absolutely kind of picked our big niches, and that's what we're going after.
You've really just described the data center industry of the last 10 years in a few words, because it is true, because in the old days everyone thought you could just copy and paste the business model.
Absolutely.
And go to another country, do the same thing. And then you've seen, you guys, when you started with AI, so it was very specific, it was AI research, HPC, it was very targeted, very niche. And now you're seeing other operators starting to focus on services, not just within the AI HPC space, but they're starting to focus their services towards a specific industry.
100%. It's not just about, dare I say it, not just about opening another Starbucks, right? There are countries like Italy that turn around and say no, thank you, right? Why? Because there's a local requirement, or there's a specific customer requirement, or there's a community requirement, and those do matter. And actually, not only do they matter, but I think that addressing them allows a company like Kao to grow, but it also allows it to develop its own unique proposition.
I think that actually could also segue into the conversation around culture, business culture. So going into Europe, so of course you know how to operate in the UK, you know how to with British companies. Going into Europe, how culturally different is that, and how is that going to change your customer acquisition strategy?
Well, I mean, you've got to remember that if you look at even our SMT, for example, our operations and technical team have built and operated across Europe. In fact, further beyond that, Singapore. So there is already experience in the team. We're always on the hunt for new and exciting talent that we can add to the team, and that will undoubtedly happen when we hit another geography. But ultimately, I think that you have some common things in every country in terms of the way you approach operation. It's about establishing local talent. It's about establishing local partnership. It's about working with local companies in the first instance, both as customers and as suppliers. So again, I've had a lot of other experiences in sort of European territories. And I think a mistake is often, as you say, not just the blueprint of what you do, but sort of imposing what you do from London won't always work. It has to be a hybrid, it has to be a relationship.
Which is what we've seen a lot with North American companies when they try to break into Europe.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the barrage of progressing cultural.
And that's fine, it's understandable because you can go from state to state in the US with reasonable ease on a same basis, right? And so why wouldn't you think? I mean, the distance. It's not just about distance. The distance in some ways is greater in some cases. Yeah, but it's not. It's because there is probably a much wider cultural and economic spectrum within the European territories than perhaps the US states.
Okay. A bit of a sidelight question as well, because Goldacre got into a joint venture with the Levenstein Group to launch another data center company called Net Data Centers in Israel.
Yes.
Are we going to see Kao and Net working closely together? Or what?
Well, as you know, I'm very much here to talk about my role in Kao, and Net is absolutely a separate platform. Okay. I mean, look, we as a team do collaborate all the time, and we are interested in these emerging markets. So, of course, I'm keen to bring the benefits both ways of having involvement in a slightly broader range of DC activities across the industry. But these are very definitively separate things. But as you say, I mean, ultimately, we'd be remiss to not, as Kao, to not be monitoring and engaging with geographies that we're not on our roadmap, but we want to keep an eye on what's going on.
Yeah, never close the door. And then I was just going to ask the last question, which is more for crystal ball almost. How do you envision AI changing the data center landscape? So they can go from anywhere from investments to architecture, design, the engineering of a facility. So this is not just down to Kao. How do you envision the markets as a whole changing over the next couple of years on the back of everything that's happening?
Yeah, interesting question.
It's a big question as well.
It's a big question. We could be here the whole day now. We could be here the whole day. I'm going to say, the statement of the obvious, it's going to change things. And it doesn't sound like an answer, but it is from a chairman's perspective. I'll tell you why. Because in change comes opportunity. Yeah. So what we're seeing already, and again, like I said with say the banking customer community versus their needs versus say the life sciences needs, is that we're going to see new and further segmentation of requirement and use cases, and that is exciting. It's good for growth. It's good for the industry. I think it will also, as you say, as models develop, you'll see that having an impact, yes, on the construction side, yes, on the architecture side, on the supply chain delivery. All of these things are going to be impacted, enhanced, and opportunity will be there. So I think that the most important thing for any business, generally, and any DC business, and then Kao specifically, is to look for the waves of change and trying to ride them, which is always, look, it can be scary, right? Once you get, I don't know if you've ever been on top of a wave. Confession, I haven't. I've generally, the last time, I've tried it a few times. I'm generally under them, before I've even kind of got going.
I gave up on that many years ago.
A bit of sort of holiday enthusiasm, but it's a skill set riding a wave, right? But that is the goal here. We see things like the opportunity for new availability zones, the growth of new customers, the requirement, the density requirements changing. All of these things, the way we look at cooling, the way we look at every aspect. And to be honest, that's what makes it exciting, because if you don't enjoy the journey here, don't do it. The destination can't be your sole objective, and that's what's great about what we have at Kao and the team that we have, is fundamentally they like the challenge and the opportunity, and so that's why I'm here, and that's why I've taken this role, and that's why after this interview I'm going to get cracking.
Well, you deserve it. But I was just going to add that often as well we kind of don't even think about the applications that these whole platforms, these data center platforms, allow you to then create. Because then what's coming is going to be amazing in
Yeah.
terms of IoTs, robotics, automation, and all that. But David Bloom, new chairman of Kao Data, literally like an hour ago. Thank you so much for talking to me.
It's been a pleasure,
Thank you.
look forward to
And next time I want
more
to see-
opportunities with
I want
exciting
to see
announcements.
what's going to happen in Europe.
Thank you.
As for you at home, thank you for watching. Do check our social media and follow us on our website for more stories from the digital infrastructure news across the world. Until next time, see you then.